Hey, Justin,
Hey, Michelle.
what did one cactus say to the other cactus?
What did one cactus say to the other cactus?
You're looking sharp.
Nice, very nice.
Thank you.
Can never go
Thank you.
wrong
Thank
with a
you.
good cactus joke.
Yeah, there's so many of them. They're awfully punny, and I couldn't think of a good cactus pun at that moment in time. Darn it. Oh, fail. We'll come up with more of them. Anyway, how are you doing today, Justin?
Fantastic. How about you?
I'm doing well. And welcome everybody to Plant Prescription, a podcast by Costa Farms, where my cohort Justin and I talk about burning plant questions, maybe a few insect things, and generally just plant stuff. So, hopping right into today, here in North Carolina, the weather is finally turning. We're getting some cooler nights. It's really nice. Aside from the fact that I'm thinking about bringing all of my plants indoors, which is a stressful couple of weeks for us
I know, I
always.
totally feel like we need a dramatic sound effect there.
I know. Oh, I'm really loving the weather, but it's like a double-edged sword, right? Because I'm thinking about all of my mandevilla and alocasias that were doing great outside. They never had spider mites outside, and now I have to bring them in. And I know in a month I'm going to be just like loaded with spider mites and everything, and I'm not looking forward to it.
Good thing you know where to find some beneficial mites.
Yeah, yeah. This year, I will say I'm gonna do better with the mandevilla. Last year, I took it in, not really thinking. I just took in the whole plant, and what do you know? It dropped every single leaf, and it was a mess. So this year, I'm gonna be proactive. I'm gonna try to trim them back. I think before I bring them in, um,
I
so it's
always
not
did
so
that too.
messy. Yeah, because last
Yeah.
year was a mess. So anyway, okay. Um, what about you over there? Are you starting to get some cooler days?
Not quite yet, but fall is coming, so we we know it's on the horizon.
Yeah, fingers crossed for you. Fingers crossed.
Yep. Do you want to talk some plant questions?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Alrighty, question number one comes from Katie in Huron, South Dakota. I can't figure out watering for my Xanthosoma. The leaf tips are all turning brown. What's your watering advice for this plant?
Hmm. Well, my first inclination, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, is if the leaf tips are turning brown, to me, that indicates underwatering. But I know every plant's different, and it's just one of those topics. It's like too much water, too little water, or it's a Goldilocks situation. But to me, it kind of indicates maybe it dried down. Um, Perfect amount of water for this plant, though. Again, Goldilocks, not too wet, not too dry. Justin, do you have a better way of explaining that than I do, other than just Goldilocks?
You know, my guideline with Xanthosomas, I wait until the top inch or two of the soil starts to feel moist with my finger. Um,
Starts to feel
and
dry.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, did I say moist?
yeah, yeah. It's okay.
No,
you were getting ahead of yourself on that one. Yeah.
yes, yes. Yeah. I find it's a little bit thirstier than a number of my other aeroids. And I guess that
Yeah.
makes sense because the leaf is certainly more thin than a pothos or a philodendron, and in general, the more thin the leaf, the more susceptible it's going to be to drying out.
Yeah.
Um, Katie, if you're good with plants and you feel like your watering should be on point, you might look at other environmental factors. Something like a hot or cold draft, if it's near an air conditioning vent, for example, that could be a cause completely unrelated to watering.
Yep.
If you fertilize, accidentally fertilizing too much or too frequently, building up salts in the soil could also cause some leaf tips to go brown. So it's not necessarily watering, although watering is the most common reason that we see um,
Yep.
this plant do that.
Yep. And I guess, going on the medium water, my advice would be if it's pick upable, right? Like if you can pick up the plant. I know most of these are in cache pots. Is that how you say it? Cache?
I say cash pots.
Cache pots. I don't know. It's got the E at the end. I'm like, is it cache or cache? Most of these are in the cache pots. And so picking that pot up because it's so heavy wouldn't really help you with this. But picking up that plastic pot that's inside of this cache pot and getting, first of all, like water it until it's well watered, like wet-ish. Obviously, you don't want to never let it sit and water in the cash pot, because that's like a recipe for disaster. But just water it in the sink, let it drain out, put it back, and feel how heavy that is. That is how heavy it is when it's wet, right? And then let it dry down and pick it up, and you're going to notice a huge difference in the weight. And if when in doubt, just get used to that like heavy weight and the light weight. And when in doubt, just pick it up, and you'll know if it's light, you'll know it'll pick up, it'll be like there's no weight to it at all. And if that's the case, I would water it.
Yep, that is fantastic advice. From personal experience, I've also found sometimes the little plastic grower pot can be a little bit snug in the ceramic pot.
Yeah, yep.
And so getting it out is not always super easy. And I have found that sometimes it's just easier to kind of grab the base of the plant and pull it out.
I was hoping you were gonna
Um,
go there.
and when it gets super dry, the root ball will come out of the plastic pot. And so that is definitely a sign to me that, oh, I let this guy get way too dry this time.
Because when it dries out, the soil is going to kind of shrink in,
Yep.
and it'll just shrink away from the pot. So the soil won't even be touching the pot. You'll just go to lift the plant out and be like, whoops,
Yep. So,
there's no pot here.
so yeah, if you gently, pull it up a little
Yeah.
bit and you're like, oh, the pot's not coming with it, definitely a sign that your plant is or has been a little bit too dry.
Been there. You?
Yep.
Many times. Yep.
Yeah, it is interesting how quickly in certain conditions plants can dry out. I know we always tell people not to water based on a specific schedule, but a
Yeah.
lot of my plants have a rhythm
Yep.
where I know, okay, this is, in general the amount and frequency at which I need to water, but then, like we'll go through a heat wave or something. And they'll just use water that much faster. And I'm like, oh,
Also,
rhythm is off.
how exactly. Well, you're going through a lot of heat waves right now, so I'm sure you're all over the place. But it for me, it also depends on how desperately does this plant need to be up potted? How long have I kept it
Yeah.
in this container? Okay, I don't for those of you on YouTube, right there, my head is blocking it. It's horrible. But right behind me, right there, that is the philodendron Birkin. And that one I found is dry all the time because it needs to be up potted, and I just haven't done it. I just like it in that pot. I just like how it looks in that pot, and I haven't done it. So that, unfortunately, it probably needs to be watered right now. If
Your
I were to
Birkin
go
is
take it
looking like a
out.
beast there, Michelle.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Nice.
It's great, but it's also kind of a bummer when they grow because it means you got to repot them. Anyway, always repotting, always have dirt underneath the fingernails. All right. Sorry if we confused you on that one. Hopefully we didn't.
All right. Question number 2 comes from Mitch in Marshall, North Carolina. I've had my little Swiss plant for about a year now. It has 2 really long vines that just keep growing and growing. I want more vines. What do I do?
Before we go into this question, I just want to put out there, I love the name Little Swiss. I think I'm just going to start calling all my, because the Latin name is Monstera adansonii, which is so blah compared to Little Swiss. I think I'm going to just start calling all of my adansonii as Little Swiss, maybe with like a rap spin on it, like Little Swiss. Um, I forgot the question. I'm sorry. I was focused on Little Swiss. What was the
So,
question?
so Mitch's plant has 2 really long vines, and that's it. And he wants it to be
Okay.
fuller with more vines.
Oh, well, I would. This is a fun one to say along with Little Swiss. I would prop and chop. Um, oh, I'm sorry. It's the opposite.
What?
I'm dyslexic today. It's chop and prop, not prop and chop. Prop comes after the chop. Oof. Chop it. So I would cut it. This is just what I would do. I would cut the long vine below a node, which is going to be like a little stubby part on that vine, which could be roots. Like you could see roots coming out of it, maybe, possibly. Otherwise, it'll just be like a little
A junction of a leaf and a stem
bump.
on
Yeah, a
on
little
Adansonii.
bumpy part. Anyway, just chop below that. Don't chop that. Chop well below that, maybe a half inch or so, depending on the distance between the bumps. And I'm super reckless. I just stick it directly in the soil. But I would recommend in this scenario, if you're not used to doing that or whatever the situation may be, to first chop and prop, stick it in a glass of water, and let the roots develop in there. Then kind of dig out a little spot in that pot with your little Swiss and put the now rooted chunk into that pot. Of course, when you do that, keep in mind I think we had an episode on like water propagation and other things. I feel like we've talked about that before. And if you do propagate in water, you're gonna want to make sure that plant stays a little bit more on the moist. I'm sure a lot of people are cringing out there and that I said moist side, rather than the dry side, because those roots that developed in water are used to water 24/7, and you don't want to shock them too much. You want to transition them to less water. That was a long that was a long rant. Justin, uh anything to add?
So a benefit of pruning your plant, like Michelle advised, is that you'll find that the nodes immediately underneath where you cut it, definitely the first node, maybe the second, maybe even the third, will start to put out new growth too. So just by trimming your plant back, you should see some side branches develop and give you that fuller, lusher look. You'll get a lot fuller, a lot faster, like Michelle advises, if you plant the cuttings in water or plant the cuttings in with that same plant. But if you don't want to do that, you'll still get the fuller look, and you can plant the cuttings elsewhere.
That's true. Sometimes you're lucky and you get two growth points coming off of a chopped spot. I'm rarely that lucky though. In terms of a lot of the houseplants I have, most of the time I only see one. So like if you chop it, it'll just start one new vine again. Sometimes I don't, there's some things that you can apply to it out there that help with the branching. Okay, we're on the topic. We're gonna get into it now, because I can't avoid it. The Kiki paste. Have you seen that on like social media
I have seen a
recently?
lot of people talk about it. I have never tried it myself.
I have not tried it either. I'm not really familiar. I don't remember what the active is in Kiki paste. Kiki paste is what orchid growers have used to either promote, I think it promotes flowering, but I'm pretty sure most of the time they use it to promote new little orchid baby plants.
Kikis,
Kikis, which are
which
baby
which
orchid plants.
thank you for saying that because I was never sure how to say that word.
Oh, I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know
Oh,
if I'm
okay.
saying it right. I'm saying it confidently, so it sounds like I know, but I have no idea.
All right. If anybody out there knows that we're wrong and wants to correct us on the pronunciation, please do so. But
We
yeah,
know.
it's when you get an orchid spike, and part of that orchid spike develops roots, and you get a plantlet off of the flower spike.
A kiki or
Yep,
kaiki.
exactly.
Okay, for those of you who are very good at pronunciation, it is spelled Keike, right? Yeah.
Believe
I'm just
so.
gonna Google this on the side. Okay, I hope it is. All right. Anyway, I've heard people using that on their plants to help promote more branching. I don't know if it works or not. I don't know.
But lots of light, give it a little fertilizer, and you should see some new growth right after you prune it back.
I was wrong on the spelling. It's Keiki. All right, close.
Okay.
There we go. Final answer. If anyone knows how to say that, please let us know.
Question number 3. This comes from Jen in Silverton, Colorado. How do I get my marble queen pothos to grow faster? She's beautiful, but it seems like she's just sitting there and not doing anything.
Well, there's two things that come to mind when I think growing plants quickly. But I want to hear you first because I've gone first on the last two. So what do you think on this one?
So first, I would make sure it's getting an abundance of light. The more, the
Yep.
better, because light is really what fuels any and all growth in your plants. Um, in Colorado,
Well, there's a
at
lot of
least,
light in Colorado. My
yeah, and
sister lives up there. She gets sunburned all the time.
At least during the winter, it feels like a
Oh,
little bit of direct sun may not through a window may not hurt your marble queen. In the summer, it might get dicey. So if you want to put it right in a window, like a sheer curtain or something to help diffuse the light a little bit, or if you want to go with artificial lights, the best way to go. Now, if you're like, oh yeah, my plant's getting plenty of light, I don't think that's the problem. Second thing I would look at is fertilizer.
yeah.
And if you're not feeding it, making sure it has nutrients. The third thing I would keep in mind is the amount of variegation, because the more highly variegated it is, the less chlorophyll there is. The
Mm.
less chlorophyll, the less fuel it has to grow, and the less expectation you should have on it compared to a greener pothos.
Yeah, that was a good point. The variegation. I didn't know where you're going for a second, and yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You hit on the two things that immediately came to mind for me, which was fertilizer and light. But while you were talking, I thought of one other thing that could help. Not a huge deal, heat. So if it's really cold, I've noticed plants tend to stall out a little bit. Um, and warmer temperatures really help things grow faster. It just everything grows faster, usually speaking, when it's warmer and
Oh, I've
heat.
got another one. Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
I've got another one too.
Okay.
Um, Make sure if it's an older plant that it's not too root bound. Because while pothos do a really good job of tolerating being root bound, there
Mhm.
is a point where it's going to stunt its growth.
Yep.
Because in nature, there's not this boundary exactly. Going back to our conversation earlier about Michelle's Birkin, the
Oh.
roots are just free to grow and grow and grow and grow. But when they reach the edges of the pot, they start filling each other, competing too much. There's not that same ability to foster top growth.
Yes. I can't stop thinking now that you've mentioned it. I'm just imagining what the roots on that look like. Just give me 1 second. Can I look? It's right there. Just give me 1 second. Can we do
Oh,
this
of
really quick?
course.
Okay.
All
I
right.
am.
So for those of you who are not viewing us on YouTube, Michelle is grabbing her giant Birkin, and I'm guessing she's about to pull it out of the pot to show
Oh, it's
us how root
watered.
bound it
Yay.
is.
It didn't just fall right out of the pot. Oh yeah. Oh gosh,
Oh,
it's
those are some
hard to
nice
see
healthy
it.
roots there, Michelle.
Yeah, I think she's just, I think this would be about the time that I would say you should probably up pot it though. It's so hard to see. This camera is not picking it all up. But anyway,
Yeah, the general guideline I have is when you look at the root bounders or the root ball, and it's about 75% roots
yeah.
or more, that's the time to give it some new digs.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I just look at, big plant, small pot, it's time.
Yeah, some plants, and I probably shouldn't admit this publicly, but my signal that they need to be up potted is when they start to tip over too easily, because there's just too much top growth for that little pot.
Yep. You're like, gosh, tired of cleaning up the dirt. Ah, I guess I just gotta pot it. Yeah. It's okay. This
Exactly.
is a
Yep.
safe place, Justin. You can admit to some of these things here. It's okay.
All right, on to our plant myth. Um, this is one that I've started to see a little bit more lately. My plant is starting to yellow. It's looking a little bit chlorotic. So the best way to fix that is to add iron to it.
Kudos to people to this myth. As it kind of as the name of it, plant myth, plant misconception. Obviously, we're gonna probably disagree with this one, but I am happy that iron is starting to be part of the conversation because I feel like to me that's like next level, right? Because sometimes in production and like some producing a lot of plants, mass scale, you can start to see this yellowing, what's called chlorosis. And this is really big. We're talking houseplants, but petunias, which is not a houseplant, this is a big thing that you're going to see in petunias a lot. And it's yellowing between the leaf veins. It's called chlorosis. And yeah, one of the reasons why is iron, which could also be tied to pH, but we're not going to get into that. Are we going to get into that? We're not going to get into that, are
I was
we?
going to get into that.
Okay, go get into it.
All right, so I spent about 10 years living in Des Moines, Iowa,
Hmm.
where soils were really pretty alkaline. And there were quite a few landscape plants, like river birch was used a lot. And it likes an acidic pH. And so you saw a lot of yellowing, same with like sugar maples. Um,
Hmm.
and um, people would fertilize and fertilize and fertilize, and it didn't always help. Because the interesting thing about some nutrients like iron is that it's pH dependent,
Yeah.
and you can have a lot of it in the soil. You can have more than enough for the plant, but the plant can't take it up when the conditions aren't right. You see the same kind of thing with like phosphorus. If the soil is too cold in the spring, a lot of your garden plants the foliage might have a really strong purplish cast. It's not able to absorb enough phosphorus even though it's there.
Yep.
Or in the vegetable gardening world, blossom end rot on tomatoes is caused by not enough calcium.
Hmm.
And again, calcium could be there, but what I think with that one, it's
It's
the
more
like
light.
temperature,
It's light. It's
light.
it's it's light dependent. If it's lower light, it tends to not go up in the plant where it needs to be. But
So
pH,
nutrients, yeah.
yes.
So nutrients can be funky that way. And I think like to me it makes sense that this common thing, because it's a common situation outdoors in a lot of areas, um, it's an iron problem that it would start to make its way indoors too. But iron is not a one size fits all solution. There could be
Nope.
lots of other reasons that the plant is yellowing. And any nutrient, going back to Michelle's Goldilocks analogy with watering, every nutrient has the same, where there's, I'm not enough, I'm going to suffer, I'm in the just right zone. But then if there's too much, it's going to
Yeah.
poison me.
Yeah. I would be really nervous to supplement iron because something is yellow before doing homework on it and getting a pH reading and just doing some Googling on pH and iron. Because iron, there's different types of chelated iron and they're all available. Well, they're available at different pH ranges. But as Justin was alluding to, if you add iron, and it's not an iron issue and your pH is actually where it should be and all of a sudden that plant just takes up all that iron, it's going to do bad things to your plant. And then you're not going to have a yellowing leaf issue. You're going to have like I don't know, it's been a long time since I've seen iron toxicity, which by the way, if you have too much of a nutrient or too, it's called toxicity. So it's been a long time since I've seen iron toxicity. And I can't even tell you what it would look like in the plant. Also, oh, we're gonna get into it. When it comes to nutrients, every plant reacts differently. So a deficiency in one plant could be yellowing, where if it's like a zinc deficiency, which is another one, it could your leaves could turn like brown and crispy. It's very complicated, but I would be very nervous to just add iron. Most of the fertilizers have some sort of iron in them. Um, so you probably don't need to add more, but I would be very, very nervous to add
And in
more.
most potting mixes indoors, you're also not going to see a high alkalinity.
True.
A lot of the potting mixes that people buy or people make tend to be peat based,
Hmm.
and peat is famous for being a little acidic on the pH range.
Yep.
Same with core. We have to add some lime to our core mix
Yep. Yep.
for pH as well. So yeah, it's not likely unless you have really high pH water that your potting mix is going to have a high pH and prevent your plant from taking up iron either.
Yep. So to answer the question, yellowing leaves, iron, maybe, but probably not. It may be more of an underwatering, overwatering scenario. Oh boy.
Or
Yeah, or
or
skunk
or
mites.
any number of other things because yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I like to say yellowing leaves is kind of like the upset stomach of the plant world. It's one symptom, but it can have so many causes,
A great
from I ate too
analogy.
many chocolate chip cookies to I have stomach cancer.
Or wow, woof. Or
I
like
mean,
I'm
that's a range, right?
hungry. Okay,
Yeah,
wow, woof. Okay. Yeah, great analogy. Very intense. I like it. It also it could be like I have fleas, aka spider
true.
mites. Okay, anyway,
Yeah.
I'm lagging there. Anyway, hope we didn't confuse you too much on that. Hope we kept things a little straight for you. And be careful if you add iron. Be very, 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 very careful. That's my advice.
Thanks everybody for listening. As always, if you have questions that you would like to hear us talk about on Plant Prescription, drop us an email at questions@costafarms.com or DM us on social media. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on TikTok now, and we'll be happy to address them in a future episode. Happy gardening, everybody.
Bye bye.